Welcome to the fourth episode of the Nerd Chatter podcast, where last week we did a catch-up discussion on DC. This week we're going to actually talk about the Wizarding World, the Harry Potter films, Fantastic Beasts, and all that good stuff. And I'm joined today by my good friend, Garrett. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. We just did your sorting online, huh? How'd that turn out?
Oh, well, I was not expecting to get Ravenclaw, but my Patronus is a St. Bernard, so it's
Yeah,
awesome. I'm a dog guy, so
jelly. And then what's your,
yeah, Mr. Rabbit.
and you had what, like English oak or something?
Yeah, English oak with a unicorn core.
Yeah. I'm a Gryffindor with a brown hair and lurch wood. But we'll discuss a little bit more of that here in a bit. I'd like to start off the shows by sharing some of the free games that we come across during the week. This week we have Ancient Enemy, and that's free on Epic Game Store until July 14th. It's like an indie card game. And you also have Killing Floor 2 back up for free on the Epic Game Store until July 14th as well. And that's, I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's a first-person shooter. I think it's like a wave-based survival game. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this week, unfortunately.
I just want to put in a plug. Thor: Love and Thunder just came out.
Mm-hmm.
Go see it.
Oh yeah, you saw that, huh? I didn't get an opportunity.
I did.
Yeah, you liked it. It's got a unique style to it. I have to get around to seeing
For
it
sure.
one way or the other. But yeah, let's jump right into the Wizarding World. Where do you want to start? Books? You want to talk about the books?
Let's talk books. Yeah.
Full disclosure first and foremost for me is that I listened to the audiobooks. I did not read the books, and also well, let's discuss where you're at. You know, with just the whole lore of it all. I mean, I wasn't into it when I was younger. I picked it up later. I'd say probably like early 20s. And I didn't partake when they were releasing the movies originally, even though it was kind of within my wheelhouse and age demographic. I never got into it. And then eventually saw the films, listened to the audiobook, and then at one point listened to the audiobook over and over and over again while at work and really enjoyed it and kind of hyped for just anything that comes out in regards to the Wizarding World and stuff. So what
Nice.
about you?
I started off by the books. My grandma got us the first two books when they got released. Actually, it was the first three books because the first two books were released in June of 1999. Then the third one was September of 1999. At least in the U.S., the UK release was a little bit different. So anyway, she got us all three books for Christmas of 1999. I remember opening them and not knowing what they were or anything, and I was like, "Oh, this is a lame gift, right?" And I didn't read them. I have dyslexia, so it was kind of hard to read for a while, and it took a while for me to click. But once I was able to get into reading, I think it was in the fourth grade time frame. The first books I read were the Harry Potter books. I literally went through all of the Harry Potter books my fourth grade year that had been released to that point, which is, I think, Goblet of Fire for sure. It was out. Order of the Phoenix hadn't come out yet. So,
I mean, that's a pretty beefy read for fourth grade.
yeah,
It's pretty impressive having dyslexia.
I went from a kindergarten grade reading level to like a seventh or eighth grade reading level in a matter of months.
Mm.
I was able to figure out why I wasn't able to like read and comprehend, and it was just like a snap of the finger, like light switch turn on, everything went go for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went to like a specialist every couple days at school. I think her name was Ann Fuller. She was great, and she helped me learn how to read and get over my dyslexia. I still struggle with it every once in a while, but
Yeah.
nowhere near as bad as when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Potter was the first books you read.
Yeah, like I had read like kindergarten grade books, like Captain Underpants and the Magic Tree House, I think it was. But I didn't get into anything else
Yeah, these were
just
actual
because.
books.
Yeah, I couldn't read them. They were just any big word I would like. Sorcerer, for instance, like with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, there was no way I could read that and understand what it was.
Yeah.
So my fourth grade year, which is I think 2001, I know for a fact it was 2001 is when I went through all of them. So the Goblet of Fire was released in July of 2000. So all four of the first four books were out when I went through them. And my teacher, who like seen me struggle at the very beginning of the year to at the end of the year, like me finishing Goblet of Fire, she was like flabbergasted completely, like what happened to this kid, because my reading comprehension just went through the roof.
Yeah.
It was
Were
cool.
you using those books as kind of like a means of getting through it, or was it just kind of like you reached a point where that was like your first goal was to like finish one of those books?
I just heard people talking about it. A lot of other kids had their parents read it to them or their siblings read it to them. So
Yeah.
like they talked about it, and my siblings all had read them, and they talked about how good books they were and how much I would like it. So I started reading The Sorcerer's Stone, and I literally couldn't put them down that year.
Yeah, I mean, I was an uncultured swine as a child. I didn't read books. I watched cartoons, and in '99 I was watching a lot of WWF, SmackDown and Raw, and going to school and talking about that. And '99, 2000 was when Counter-Strike came out, so I was like, boop, like just online gaming. That's where my life was. So I missed the beat with the Harry Potter stuff because when 2001 I was starting high school. So like,
Yeah.
I wasn't worrying about that anymore. I wish I got into it, but to be honest, the way that I consumed it is just as gratifying to me, to be honest. Like I really appreciate the world building and just the overall premise of what's going on here. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, damn, I wish I had that idea, but it came, so long ago. But there's just so much like rich content there to like tap into, which we'll get into, which
Yeah.
is what the first movie or the first book. I'm sorry, the first book is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone here in America, right?
Yep.
That came out in 2001. So yeah, I was definitely starting
Yeah.
high school. That's why I missed it. I thought it was '99, but no, I was still watching WWF and still gaming for sure. Is definitely knee deep in gaming by that point. But um, we'll start off with kind of going down the list here, and we're not going to break them up from book to movie because, to be honest, they're fairly accurate. You'd agree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're
I would say they're a faithful representation of
yeah
what the books are.
what you
Not
can do.
100% accurate, but faithful.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the property itself, right? The book and the film. So the Sorcerer's
Yep.
Stone. We'll discuss the differences and things like that, and then we'll just kind of move down the list. We don't want to make this too long. So the
Yep.
first one is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, so the Philosopher's Stone in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. But
Correct.
that film came out in 2001, correct?
Yeah.
The,
And the books originally came out in, so the UK version was 1998.
hmm,
Then the US version for was released in 1999.
all right. So I
Yep.
mean, in terms of popularity, I mean, you're looking at like as old as Pokemon, essentially, right? I think that came out in like
Yeah.
'97. So
About.
by this point, it's not a new property. It's been pretty established, so that's why we're kind of giving it some attention. But Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I haven't read the books specifically. I listened to the audiobooks many times, and I've seen the movies quite a few times.
There's a scene in the books where the Dursleys go to a hotel to get away, which was omitted from the film. So they go straight to the hut on the island, where
Oh
the,
yeah,
yeah, where I mean Hagrid shows up and kicks some butt.
yeah,
Gives Dudley a tail,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, so what we'll
um,
do is we'll just combine the books and the movies just so that we
yeah,
don't have to jump back and forth. But we'll talk about comparisons and differences and things like that. But yeah, the differences that were in the first book. I mean, let's be honest. We understand why they do it
mhm.
because the books are, I don't know, what, 14 plus hours or something like that.
Well,
I
I
forget
mean,
how
just
long it
looking at
is.
like the first book I think is the shortest. I mean, it's like a 309-page book. The second book's 349,
Yeah.
345,
In terms of audiobook,
734.
it's over 10 hours for these stories that they have to compress into a 2 hour to 3 hour film. So
Yep.
then you also have to judge it based on that. What did they choose to leave in and take out, the importance of what they removed, and did it have an effect on the story overall, that
Yeah.
type of thing. But that's my thing with them and the comparisons to the book is that listening to the book, I don't get frustrated thinking that, oh, they should have left this in, they should have left that out. It's just
Yeah.
I appreciate the detail that they took for picking and choosing the topics to kind of push through in the film. Um,
But yeah, exactly. These are very faithful representations of the book. This is going to be kind of random, but have you ever seen the Da Vinci Code series? So there's Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, and there's a couple other novels. I don't think that are movies yet. Have you seen those?
I've seen the movies, and yeah, Dan Brown was a thing back in like 2005 that was very
Yeah,
popular. I was college kid age, so yeah, I was, I was
yeah,
aware. Interesting movies, and that's what, his stuff definitely caused all that hysteria over the Knights Templar and
Hmm.
the Freemasons and that type of thing. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
aware.
So the second book is vastly different from the movie. There's like key people that are completely changed.
Mm,
There's like, critical story elements that they just completely change or remove altogether, where it feels like a different story,
mm-hmm.
which is definitely not the case with Harry Potter. So it it
But at
has the
least
same
Angels and
feel. And
Demons had Ewan McGregor. You know what I'm saying?
oh yeah,
It
he
had Ewan
he
McGregor
he was
opposite
in
Tom
there.
Hanks. That's pretty good.
Oh, it was that I'm not bagging on the movie. It like and the people in the movie. It's whoever did the screenplay for that
They
movie
cut a
did a
lot.
really poopy job.
Yeah, they definitely cut a lot, and I mean I like those films. I liked all that, but you look at a Dan Brown book, and it's like, yeah, that's not a 2.5 hour movie for
But
sure.
the first Da Vinci Code book and the actual Da Vinci Code movie, they are it's a faithful representation. The
Yeah.
second one isn't. It's just completely different. While all of the Harry Potter books, they all stay like within the realm of faithfulness, like extreme faithfulness of the books. Yeah, there's little scenes taken out here and there, changed for pacing and for storytelling reasons, but it's not like we're missing key elements, you know?
You still get the world building from what you're given in
Yeah.
the films, and
Yeah.
like I said, I mean I'm thoroughly appreciative of the world building that takes place in the first film, and I don't think I got as spooky a vibe from Voldemort in the first film. Especially, I just think it's the CGI that was involved with establishing that character, and given, I mean that is how that character is presented in the books. Inhabiting somebody's body or
Yeah.
the back of their head. But
With Voldemort in the first book, he's like the bad guy, who and all of that type of stuff, but it's not overly apparent how spooky and truly like, how much of a bad guy he is.
yeah, I mean, the world definitely matured over time, and that's the
Oh,
thing with
100%.
the later books like the Deathly Hollows and stuff. It's pretty dark. I wouldn't say there's a dramatic difference in the collateral damage from the book to the film, but there's a little more description in regards to what happens to some of the students and during that fight and certain things. But it's pretty graphic, but I think that's where the warm and fuzzy feeling from that first film comes from, where it's like you still get that mysticism of the
Mhm.
world, but at the same time you get this just the foundation of how you're supposed to feel, and that childlike representation of this world having been introduced to it. And then later
Yeah.
you're kind of introduced to the realism of the realistic aspect of this world and how dark it is.
But I mean, the books mature is like the our main characters mature as well, so that they face more serious things as they age and get closer to graduating Hogwarts and everything. And I mean, logically, a majority of the audience, especially with the books and the movies, were also aging up with it. It's not like you throw in a fourth grader like when I was initially got into it. You don't throw a fourth grader right into Deathly Hollows, and it's just like you don't do that.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm looking at this wiki. I mean, we might as well just read off these short synopses for these films. I mean, there might be people that haven't even seen or read these books, and might need a little rundown. So Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, also the Sorcerer's Stone here in America. Harry Potter is an orphan boy brought up by his unkind, muggle, non-magical aunt and uncle. At the age of 11, half-giant Rubeus Hagrid informs him that he is actually a wizard, and that his parents were murdered by an evil wizard named Lord Voldemort. Voldemort also attempted to kill 1-year-old Harry on the same night, but his killing curse mysteriously rebounded and reduced him to a weak and helpless form. Harry became extremely famous in the wizarding world as a result. Harry begins his first year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and learns about magic. During the year, Harry and his friends Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger become entangled in the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone, which is being kept within the school. And that came out in 2001 on film. And you said, what, 98 in book form?
The UK version was 98, yeah.
So 99 for America. I mean, you're talking about a really quick adaptation in terms of film, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, just as a way of talking about it, like the book was released, the first book was released in July of 1998, and that was in the UK, like I said. In October of 1998, Warner Brothers had purchased the film rights already for the first 4 novels from JK Rowling for it's not known exactly how much, but 7 figures of some sort.
Thinking it was a good idea.
Oh yeah, and I mean, J.K. Rowling had very specific thoughts and wishes about the films when they drafted that contract. So I think that's probably why the books are so faithful. It's because J.K. Rowling was persistent on that.
Yeah. Not proving very useful in the Fantastic Beasts series, to be honest. Her involvement is, I mean, I think she tried to take the reins a little bit more, but she is certainly not a screenwriter. I mean, she can really build a world, but when you're left with 2 hours of screen time, she had a tendency of wasting a good bit of that time in kind of pointless stuff. But the first 2 films of the Fantastic Beasts series, I didn't care for. But to be honest, the Secrets of Dumbledore is not bad. I do recommend it, especially if you've seen the other ones. But yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I've seen the first 2.
She had a heavy involvement with the theme park as well. Over at Universal down in Florida, and it looks impressive. She demanded a train, she got a train. So yeah, in regards to just the Philosopher's Stone in general, I just like how it is that whimsical world building, and then you get the kids, they're in their kid plot, doing their kid things. But for me personally, I do enjoy that one the most. For the sake of getting through these, we should probably move on to Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah. Yeah. So Chamber of Secrets was initially released in book form in the UK in 1998. I think that what I'm looking at is wrong. I think the initial book release of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was in 97, with Chamber of Secrets in 98 as well, then with the US version being in 1999. The US versions of the first 2 books share the same release date, which is unfortunate.
I'll do a little rundown. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, released on film in 2002. Harry, Ron, and Hermione return to Hogwarts for their second year, which proves to be more challenging than the last. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened, leaving students and ghosts petrified by an unleashed monster. Harry must face up to claims that he is the heir of Salazar Slytherin, founder of the Chamber. Learn that he can speak Parseltongue, and also discover the properties of a mysterious diary, only to find himself trapped within the chamber itself. So I mean, this is the book where you get Thomas Riddle. You get that whole introduction of that storyline. See, that's the hard part, because this is like the juicy part of Harry Potter in general that I like. Like the looking back and the development of these characters, or the downfall of these characters. I love the history of like Salazar Slytherin and all the founding members of Hogwarts, and that's why I thought I would like the Fantastic Beasts a lot more than I did, because it takes place in that time frame. But the Chamber of Secrets, this is where you start getting the introduction into the past and what happened, and you get the book, and you get these new characters that you start getting more of a menacing feeling of the threat that's looming out there, and what they're up for in these later books. How'd you feel about Chamber of Secrets?
Well, I mean, I feel like it started to show what Voldemort really was and is capable of, and I mean, with the the diary of Tom Riddle, and like we learn later it's a Horcrux, but it's like that Tom Riddle's essence was in there and affecting other students. And
Do you
I
think
mean,
that it was intended to be a Horcrux when it was originally written, or do you think that it was like retroactively kind of adapted to fit the future Horcrux story that came later?
that is a great question. If I were to take a guess, I would probably say that JK Rowling had the initial inklings that this could be used later on as something deeper, but it was kind of open ended in that aspect, but didn't know exactly what it was going to be, and that's why it wasn't named a Horcrux in that book.
Yeah. I
What
mean,
about you?
I like the Horcrux idea just in general. I mean, it's definitely menacing and how they go about establishing like how I know there's differences in the books when they're discussing, when they're actually getting into the thicket of the storyline of the
Mhm.
Horcruxes and actually going and looking for them and stuff like that. It gets a lot more deep, and I kind of do see it as like maybe she just pulled it in, like it might have just been her inspiration for that book and the story, and then after the fact, when she was thinking about what to write next, she was taking what she had previously and kind of building up on it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I just think that idea in general is just interesting, and that goes to strengthen my point earlier, just the world building of just how unique of an idea that is. Intentionally
Mhm.
splitting your soul and imbuing it into objects, but also it being connected to a heinous act. Very interesting. It fits the villain of the story, and it helps to kind of reinforce how evil he's actually willing to be. And in the film, you don't get that really. You get it as a means of accessing the backstory of Tom Riddle and how he became Lord Voldemort for the most part. Kind of like an entry into that character. You don't get the full conversion and all that stuff. But in the books, do you remember if he looked like a snake before? I don't know if he looked like Tom Riddle or if he looked like Voldemort when he went to go kill the family. I
I
forget.
can't remember if it's even mentioned, to be honest. I would assume that it's he doesn't look like the flat nose, little slit things
Mhm.
until we see him in Goblet of Fire.
Well, I remember in the book,
And
there was Dumbledore was talking about an instance where Tom Riddle came into Hogwarts in seek of employment. He came there to get he wanted to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. And I forget if there was lines from Dumbledore in the book that commented on his change in appearance. I could have swore there was a reference to some type of change in his appearance.
okay, so I just googled this up because I was interested. So Voldemort's face and his general appearance changed as he started using deploying the Horcruxes, if you will.
Mm-hmm,
As he did that, he changed with each one. So I'm pretty sure when he used Nagini as a Horcrux, that's when
oh,
his essence changed because essentially he was joining his soul with Nagini's.
yeah. Stupid storyline. I hate the Nagini storyline. Those Fantastic Beasts movie. What is that? Ugh, whatever. Anyways, yeah. So there was, yeah. Because I could have swore that I do remember somebody commenting on his change of appearance. Like it was just kind of like he was taking on like slightly different traits, in his face and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's you still don't get the Goblet of Fire level introduction to Voldemort as a character. We'll get to that, but I love the acting in that film. That character is so cool.
Well, and here's a quote from the book just talking about Voldemort's appearance. So this was said by Dumbledore. Yet it fitted. Lord Voldemort had seemed to grow less human with the passing years,
Mhm.
and the transformation he had undergone seemed to be only explicable if his soul was mutilated beyond the realms of what we might call usual evil.
God, just listen to that. That just sounds so like beautiful to read.
I
Like that
know.
just sounds so Dumbledore. And I remember there was a difference in the movie, but you get it. So when Hagrid storms in and he's like, Harry's innocent, he's flinging around this chicken in the movie. They don't explain any of that. Like they don't explain why, because like in the books, Ginny goes, kills the chickens, and uses the chicken blood to write on the wall. In the movie, it's just there's blood on the wall, and then you get Hagrid coming in at the last bit of that entire kind of point of the movie. You see him flinging around a dead chicken. Me just seeing it, I was like, oh, he got caught in the middle of dinner. He was cooking, and he came running. But once I listened to the books, I was like, oh, he was coming to show like where the blood came from. That it was from a chicken, because I think it was even explained in the books that it was. So,
and that's just like a really curious thing, because the movie almost seems like it was the caretaker's cat. Like it portrays it as the blood came from the cat, but the cat was still alive, type of thing. Yes, it was kind of weird.
I remember that. It was like, how much blood came out of that cat? Good God.
I know. Yeah. But it definitely wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But the movie portrays it as such.
I do like the not making direct contact. It's the whole. I mean, it is literally like Medusa. It's a Medusa.
100%
plot. Make eye contact, turn to stone. But that in this case, it's like get secondary eye contact and you turn to stone. If you make eye contact, you die. So nobody died, and I always thought that was kind of weak. How it's like everybody just happened to skirt away, making direct eye contact with this creature, where that's kind of its power. What was the first one? It was the reflection. I think it was the reflection of the water, and then it was through nearly head to the snick. And then Hermione she was using a mirror to look around corners, right?
Yeah.
And then the camera, looking through the lens of the camera.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, the chances of that happening was kind of like, I'm not saying that I wish like anybody would like die in the book, but I think to sell it, having some random character bite the dust would have been like even more like weighted. But we're talking about the second book in the series. Is this the book with Lockhart?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the book with Lockhart. Funny character. What do you think about that character?
I think it's kind of funny how he's portrayed, initially as this hero, all of these different qualities and traits. He's done all these great things for the wizarding community, and I mean, we later learn that he's literally like wiping out the people's memories that actually did that and claiming them as his own.
Yeah, he's a fraud.
Kind of dark. 100% fraud, but it was just like, kind of dark.
I think it was a little bit darker in the books too, if I'm not mistaken. They just kind of go into detail as to like when he did the Obliviate and how and that type of thing, and I think the character, I mean, they always have that character that comes in, after the first, I mean, you had Professor Quirrell, right? He's the oddball professor, and then you have Lockhart, oddball professor, and then Prisoner of Azkaban, you have Lupin, right? Oddball professor.
I love Lupin though. He's a great character.
Yeah, he is. He's very like he's a cozy character for sure.
Yep.
Goblet of Fire, you get Moony, probably one of my favorite characters from the books. I mean, even though that's not really the character that you're getting introduced to, but so I mean, Goblet of Fire, you have that, but you also have Cedric, who he's not an oddball professor, but just your oddball character. Disposable, obviously. Order of the Phoenix. Who would you say there would be your? I mean, you get Sirius. Yeah, Sirius Black.
Well, I don't think he's the odd one. I mean,
he's the injection into the storyline because he dies in that film, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
super sad.
So I mean, he's the disposable character in that one. Now, and I say disposable in the sense that they're introduced and they're removed. And going back in these films, each one of those characters was introduced and removed, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Half-Blood Prince, I think you get a little bit more of, you get Slughorn. Yeah,
Slughorn's definitely the weird one there.
Love that character. Oh, I love that character. I love Slughorn so much. He's disgruntled, but he's committed. The beautiful acting too in that character. Super fun. That character, he's not removed. However, his importance to the story plot is removed. I think the trade-off there is you get Snape, in this film, who is removed from the equation essentially. So I mean, it gets a little bit different in these later films because the storyline starts getting a lot more thick. There's no need to have these throwaway plots. I'm not going to say they're throwaway plots; it's disrespectful, but you know what I mean. They're their motivation for the film, and then to progress the overall story throughout the other films. The characters are removed once they've served their purpose. But this is where it does get juicy, where you start getting those characters kind of having more of an impact in their decisions. So we won't get into the Half-Blood Prince and the Deathly Hallows. We'll kind of go back to the Chamber of Secrets. But all in all, I think the Chamber of Secrets in general, just the premise of it is super cool. And that's why I like that film. It kind of irks me how everybody turns on Harry so quickly, but it is what it is.
And I think the reason people do that is, people in general like to turn on each other, and it makes Harry more relatable to just the average person. And you're not this wizard or anything crazy, but you can relate to that part of Harry where he's been through rejection, he's been through disappointment, and all of these different things that are normal people emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and you in this film too, you start getting more of a real story. It's like, okay, well, now that nice haze, that radiant haze over this world is now starting to get tainted a little bit, and here's the reality of it. It actually is a little bit grimy and old, and some certain concepts are a bit outdated and inappropriate. So. You start getting a little bit more of a idea of where the story is going to go, but a lot of characters I do like from this film in particular, So I do appreciate it. I'm not going to say it's like one of my favorites, but now going on to the next one, we got Prisoner of Azkaban, right? I'll read this little blurb here. This one film was released in 2004. What's the book on that one?
It was September of '99.
Oh, September of '99.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, Harry's third year sees the boy wizard, along with his friends, attending Hogwarts school once again. Professor R.J. Lupin joins the staff as a defense against the dark arts teacher, while convicted murderer Sirius Black escapes from Azkaban. The Ministry of Magic entrusts the Dementors to guard Hogwarts from Black. Harry learns more about his past and his connection with the escaped prisoner, who is played by...
Gary Oldman.
Good old Gary Oldman. True G, just an absolute, mega actor, god tier actor. I will say that his character in this film is a little bit different from just how he's presented in the other ones. It's a bit hokey in the beginning, but
I think that's part of the the allure of that movie. In the book is we have this crazy lunatic convict who's escaped, and you have that tenseness that builds up because of that until you learn more about him.
Well, he'd also be a bit crazy too, just having spent where he, the time in Azkaban. Yeah, that's no small feat for sure.
And then the Dementors, whatever.
Yeah. One character I overlooked at all these films, I have to just throw it in there. Filch is like my favorite character.
Yeah, he's the caretaker with the cat. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Every second that man is on screen, I love it. I love his mannerisms. I love his attitude.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is I think it's in the last movie where Hogwarts is practically destroyed, and he's just there with a broom, sweeping away,
just a daunting,
everything's fine.
A daunting level of rubble in front of him, just piled to the ceiling, and he's just sweeping. He picks up one rock, he looks at it, and he throws it in the pile of rocks, and he continues sweeping. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's that world building that I'm talking about. It's like, that's just what he has to do. That's his job. Back at it. So Prisoner of Azkaban, you get the Lupin and Sirius storyline. I like the kind of switcheroo on that. I like the you get Peter Pettigrew and the rat. Super interesting. I like that. Missing a finger. In the books, you get a lot more detail about that night. What happened? How he died. Air quote. Why people think that Sirius was the one responsible. He did kind of come off crazy, to be honest, in the book when handling that situation. However, it was Pettigrew's doing, and him disappearing and timing his transformation to a rat, blew off his finger or whatever. All they found was a finger because there was an explosion, and so much cool stuff in terms of that storyline that was kind of skipped over, where this was the film that you think they would go into it with a quick flashback or something. But that's where Hagrid left. I think he was shocked that, because he took his bike, he gave him his bike, and he's like, go, he was kind of facilitating Hagrid's reaching the Dursleys and Dumbledore. So I mean, there's a lot going on with that whole thing that they kind of skipped over. Where I thought this was the film that they might throw a bit of that information in, but they didn't. I'm not sure of any type of deleted scenes or anything like that, so I'm not going to speculate. But anything. What about this film for you? I mean, there's some specific stuff. You get Ministry of Magic, you get the Dementors,
Yeah,
which is like the creepiest thing ever.
seriously. I mean, I think the movie portrayed the Dementors really, really well.
The movies did it right, but I think it's kind of like hit or miss in the movies because sometimes they just kind of seem like passive threats, just kind of floating by. But that the introductory scene on the train, there's a couple
Mhm.
scenes where they're kind of floating over fields and like things are dying underneath them. Like that type of vibe was cool. When he's up on his broomstick and they're kind of zipping by and kind of sucking out his essence little by little, and I like the fall scene. And this is the movie with the fall scene, right, where he falls off his broomstick and is like plummeting to
Oh,
earth, and then Dumbledore stops him, or he slows him down before he hits the ground.
is that when he's playing
Yeah,
Quidditch?
they're playing Quidditch, and then the Dementors are they're high up, and he's like in the clouds, and that was kind of like whatever for me, like just the way they were a passive. They weren't as menacing and scary as they were before. It kind of just seemed like they were just like fish taking nibbles. The fall was scary, like how he's plummeting to earth, and you
Hmm.
know, a lot of cool stuff. It's just there's a certain feeling that you get from this film going forward that really sets the tone for. I mean, Azkaban in general. This once they started getting into Azkaban as a place and kind of what they do to wizards and how dark
Dark.
it is. Yeah, it's like you start getting in there. It's like, oh, okay, all right, this is bad.
Yep.
Like, the Dementors are they're literally sucking out your soul.
Well, and especially like we see that start to happen, and it's immensely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Then I mean, we had the end of the movie. Harry learns how to use the Patronus spell, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
Because Lupin, good old Lupin,
like him thinking that was it his mom or his dad came to save him, but it was just really him using that stupid. Um,
the Patronus. Yeah, I mean,
well, no, it was that time thing that Hermione was using to go to like 12 classes.
I
It
want
wasn't 12 classes.
I want to bring it up. I know what it's like a time dial they call it. So in the books, what it is with the dial is that you have to like check it out through the Ministry of Magic. Like it's this big process. They don't just give it to anybody, but like the only place to get them is like through official means. They don't really tap on that, but like I forget it was McGonagall was her sponsor, I guess, on that request to the Ministry of Magic to get that, and that was always the fun thing. She's always disheveled in that movie because she's just all over the place. I do like the time play that's going on. I like how they looped all that around. You got and this is in the beginning of the film. You have the aunt, right? The horrible Aunt Petunia stopping by the house, right? Is this the one where he blows her up like a balloon?
I think so.
Yeah, because he storms out of the house and he has his carry case or whatever, his suitcase, and he's sitting on the side of the road, and then that's when he sees Sirius the dog.
Yep. Then the bus comes to pick him up.
Then the bus comes up, and then you get I forget that character's name, but I remember that distinctly. It was that the guy that picks him up, the funny guy, he was on Voldemort's side, but was under a brainwash spell.
Yeah, the night bus.
The night bus. Hey guys, why the long faces?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's when the movie started getting like cool to me, and I would say probably that would be like one of my top three. Goblet of Fire is like my number one or number two. It's a toss up between that and Half Blood Prince. But yeah, that's Prisoner of Azkaban is really where you start getting the tone. I mean, the whole concept of like the werewolf was pretty scary too. Just
Hmm.
it's pretty intense. The fact that I mean he looked the way he looked too. It's kind of creepy in the movies. But in the book, the way they convey that whole story plot is pretty dark and creepy. I think in the book, and this angered me the most, is that the way that Snape finds them all talking about Peter Pettigrew and how he comes in and all that is irritating in the book, because what Harry does is that he sets down his cloak of invisibility at the base of the tree, and Snape comes along and just takes it and he basically does what Harry did in the film where he snuck into the bar and was listening to the the teachers talk about his godfather. But he basically did that to them. He puts on the cloak and he sneaks into the room and he listens to the conversation and then he chooses the time to bring it up. But in the film, he just kind of walks in. But I remember in the book that irking me because just how flagrant Harry is with this cloak. It is literally one of like the three rarest things in the world, and he's just like tossing it around, doesn't care about it. Like it is
Well, at the
established.
time, he doesn't realize how significant the
in the
cloak
in
is.
the book it is clearly it is. Even Ron in the first book, I think it is, or when he receives the cloak, he's like, this is unlike any other invisibility cloak in there is. Like, this actually works. Like, this makes you like gone, because like I guess it's not 100% for all the other cloaks out there. Like, they're kind of just like an
Yeah,
illusion. But this
but
cloak is
but
the real deal.
yeah, but still, like Harry doesn't appreciate it for what it is yet.
No, yeah, no. I mean, I don't think he ever really does, to be honest. It's just kind of a
I mean,
tool.
he does later
They
on.
never really have confirmation that that is, part of Death's robe. But it's heavily hinted at that, he's part of the family bloodline of the family that received that cloak originally.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's no official confirmation, but I mean, how could he not be?
I mean, the way I love that storyline, just we'll talk about that later, but the Deathly Hollows and just where all that stuff comes from. It's like some of my favorite stuff in Harry Potter. But yeah, that was just something that irked me about the books, was just how, I mean, even if it is, he didn't know how rare it is. Like, obviously, it's like the coolest thing ever. Just gonna leave it
Heck
there,
yeah.
especially for Snape to find it. And then the kind of the way that Snape, he comes to their rescue in the book. He's the one that goes and picks them up and takes them. He defends the kids from Lupin when he changes, and I think he's
Yep.
like knocked out or something like that. But that goes a long way in regards to establishing Snape as a person, his character, and they left that out
Yep.
in the film. I was kind of disappointed with that.
Well, and I think what they were trying to do is people that hadn't read the book, they wanted to portray Snape as he could go completely one way or the other. Like he was on that fence line, where in the books there's more instances where, he's doing the good thing because he truly is a good person and
Yeah,
not
that
just
is the
because
thing. He is established a lot better in the books as more of a good person.
yeah.
He's got his
Well,
issues, but
oh yeah, but in the movies, it's like he rides that fine line where he could teeter either way. And I mean, especially in the movies, he's presented more as a bad guy, especially in the later
Mhm.
films until his reveal.
Yeah, I think they did Snape a little dirty in the book, in the films. To be honest, I do remember that distinctly. It's like, well, this already kind of gets me in a different headspace with Snape going into these future books, and how I'm going to perceive his decision making, and then to me, even on a personal level, being even more devastated when he chooses to like kill Dumbledore. It's like
Yep.
it even established more of this difference of kind of headspace as to where the character was. But in the movies, he was just kind of like always pissed off at Harry and just he was projecting.
Yep.
That's just how that character was. And then he did what you would assume one day he probably would have done, and then later find out all this other stuff. But in the books, it's a lot more thoroughly laid out. I
Hmm.
remember the I mean, I don't think it's this book. It might be a later book, but when he's helping him fight off these thoughts and Voldemort getting into his head and stuff like that, there's a lot more detail and information that you get from his youth growing up with his mom and
Yep.
stuff like that, and kind of what that meant. There's a lot more heart involved with that character in the books, which is another reason
Yep.
why I recommend people read the books or listen to the books, because you get a lot more from these types of characters that you might like, but you kind of feel bad liking. It just makes
Yep.
it a lot more of like a real experience and world where people are left with decisions where you gotta do what you gotta do type thing.
Yep. Well, I just while we're talking about Snape, the screenwriting did him dirty, but Alan Rickman did a fantastic job of portraying the character from start to finish. From
Yeah.
what the material he was given with, he worked really well with it.
I think he was visually supposed to look more like Filch in terms of like just his face and his hair and his posture and that type of thing. In the books, they did kind of, he had long, greasy hair that was cascading over his face, and he had like a hook nose and like sunken eye, like he looked more kind of like evil. He looked more menacing as a character. And Alan Rickman just looked like Alan Rickman and his amazing top tier acting. I love that man and like everything. I mean, Die Hard, come on now. I mean, Dogma. I
Mhm.
loved him in Dogma growing up, and all these other films that he popped up in. But every time he was in those films, he portrayed that character consistently, and I think it was fairly okay. But like I said, just you get more of the internal struggle with him as a character in the books. But yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban, it's a good one. You do have
Yep.
Ministry of Magic too, which becomes pretty thick in these future books and films. Which the next one is the Goblet of Fire, and
Just talking about Prisoner of Azkaban, it's this one is probably, I would say it's one of my top two favorite books and of the movies as well. Just having Lupin come in and Severus or Sirius Black. I mean, those two are probably my favorite characters out of the all of them outside of Harry. So I really appreciate this movie for setting those characters up, especially for what they do later on. Solid movie.
yeah. Well, I mean, we have to hit on the Marauders map. Completely skimmed over the entire backstory of that map.
Hmm.
I mean, in the books, you have a very flushed out flashback story of these four characters, what they were doing in their school years, what they were doing for Lupin. It talked about them being animagus and not being registered with the ministry, which is highly illegal. So I mean, you have that's why people don't. That's why they don't know where Sirius Black is because he's not a registered animagus with the Ministry of Magic or the Ministry of Defense or whatever it is. So they have no record of him being able to transform, much like Peter Pettigrew, and why they never found him. And then Lupin is I mean, they did it for him. They taught themselves how to be animagus, so that they can keep him company when he turns, because he was not aggressive towards other animals during that time. Which I mean is again, warm and fuzzy character building. Those are deep things that convey where these characters are at, where what they thought of their friends and what they're willing to do, and the compassion and the character of them. So I think maybe Prisoner of Azkaban is the worst victim of things being cut from the book that actually do make a difference in the film. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. We'll think about other stuff going down, but those are some pretty big things. The leaving out of the Marauders map and the story behind it, and the entire concept of the Animagus and the Ministry of Magic, how they categorize and keep track of these wizards and witches that have that ability, and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a good movie, but it's definitely a better book for sure, actually.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, Goblet of Fire. This is a top two for me. That's like duking it out for Half Blood Prince, but Goblet of Fire. I'll read this one, and then we'll kind of hear what you think about it. During Harry's fourth year, Hogwarts plays host to the Triwizard Tournament. 3 European schools participate in the tournament, with 3 champions representing each school in the deadly tasks. The Goblet of Fire chooses Fleur Delacour, Victor Crumb, and Cedric Diggory to compete against each other. However, Harry's name is also produced from the goblet, thus making him the 4th champion, which leads to a terrifying encounter with the reborn Lord Voldemort. And that was 2005 for that film, so that was my graduating year in high school. And when was the book?
July of 2000.
2000. Damn, that's just... Yeah, you're getting a lot of books. She's writing fast, man. Whoa, that's a lot of writing.
Yep. And she slows down from here because she's also working on the movies.
Mhm.
So the next 3 books take her 7 years, essentially.
She wasn't necessarily knee deep in any type of production or anything, but she's an oversight role. Everything had to go through her, and it definitely took up
Yep.
her time. But Goblet of Fire, I mean, you have Cedric Diggory. I wish they would have introduced him maybe as like a background character at some point in the previous films or books, but they kind of just inject him. I mean, you get it's one of your most predominant Hufflepuff characters, and
Mhm.
obviously a sad outcome. But what do you think of Goblet of Fire as a whole?
I mean, the first 3 books and movies are very much hinting at Voldemort, and there's a little bit of darkness here and there. I mean, there's a pretty good amount of like dark material in the other two movies, but here we get dark. I mean, while we start off this movie with having the little kind of mutilated Voldemort
The fetus
carcass, if you
Voldemort,
will,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the whatever the hell.
like in the manor, and like this, how like Harry's seeing this, and it just starts off really dark, and we have our first student death, which is I mean, it's dark with
Yeah,
Cedric
you
dying.
get you get
It's
child death in this book, in this movie. Yeah, that is true.
which is honestly surprising, because I mean, we like, especially with Chamber of Secrets, I mean,
Yeah,
like you talked about how you were surprised how no one else died. I mean, it's crazy to me to think that no one else died in that book, because I mean, the only other than Harry, well, it's not even Harry. I mean, the only thing that really sees the basilisk's eyes is nearly Headless Nick, and he's already dead. So I mean,
yeah. Well, and
he can't.
Moaning Myrtle too. She saw
Well,
the
yeah,
ice.
she died, but you mean that was in the
I mean,
past.
that might be a reason as to why they didn't kill off any of the kids, because it'd be like, okay, so Moaning Myrtle would have another friend, right? Like there would be
Yeah,
another one of the students would be a ghost, and that would be kind of weird.
yeah.
But yeah, you do see
So
death and child death in this film too. That's not something that you typically see in a film like that, you know?
no. So it's just, it starts off dark and it stays dark. I mean, with Harry not putting his name in, and like all of these challenges are truly like life threatening, with the dragons and the mer people, right? That are
Mm-hmm.
like, that look cute, and all of a sudden they go ape crazy on him. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah. I mean, they're not aggressive. They were like referees essentially, you know.
Yeah,
They
but
got a little they
still,
got a
it's
little
just like,
spicy towards the end, but it was within the realm of reason for like the whole story. Yeah, the whole kidnapping of the kids and putting them at the bottom of the lake. It's like, yeah, they probably weren't in danger, but still it's pretty messed up. I mean, with the Goblet of Fire too, I mean, you have this whole like anti Harry concept, even with Ron, where it's a bit weird how he thinks that he's been betrayed because Harry did this without telling him, and all this. It kind of seems like something a little bit too small for Ron to all of a sudden just kind of lose faith in Harry and just not believe anything he says type thing. And it's like, why
mhm.
why would he keep that from you? It doesn't even make any sense. So with the Goblet of Fire, you have the, what is it, the Quidditch tournament, the Quidditch World Championship,
Yep,
where they introduced the port keys, right? This is where you kind of
yep,
get your introduction to the port keys and how they work. And I like that whole scene. I like the before and after, like the matches, whatever. I mean, yeah, it looks like a Quidditch match, but I like the celebrating afterwards, and then kind of how it takes a tonal shift into the Death Eaters coming through and destroying everything, and kind of you know setting the tone for what the story is going to be. And you also get Mad Eye Moody, right? We get Mad Eye Moody in this film.
well, yeah,
A,
kind of.
a certain form of Mad Eye Moody. I mean, the version that I like more, to be honest, but you don't get to experience him out of this form for very long. You get some decent character development, especially with the Voldemort character in general, just how he comes to be. And
And that's what I'm saying. Like at the beginning, we do see Harry at the manor, or having that vision of the manor with little demented Voldemort fetus, or whatever we want to call him. Actually, I don't know if Harry's seeing that, or if we just see that as the audience. I can't remember.
yeah,
But we see that regardless, and we have that Quidditch match and the fallout of everything, and you're right. It's a complete tonal shift from everything that we've seen before. It's just, it gets into the dark parts of Harry Potter and everything. I really like it. I like the tone that it really transforms for the rest of the books and movies.
yeah. Well, it also expands on the overall world of the Wizarding world as well, to show you there's other
Hmm.
schools out there with different approaches to it. Yeah, I mean, I think my issue with it is just kind of how the dynamic between the three characters in this film, and just kind of the drama going on with all that. And it's like it all comes to when it gets down to business later when he's going through his trials. But I don't know. It kind of seemed a little bit like angsty in regards to how they were treating one another. And in the books,
I mean, it was.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's good world building, but at the same time, there was some kind of drama that I don't know. I got used to feeling the way that I did with the characters and how kind of shoulder to shoulder they were and kind of just the team, you know. But you get a little bit of drama. But I mean, it's still one of my like top favorite films, even with me not being into that storyline a little bit. You can definitely have some fun with it. But yeah, for the sake of time, let's go ahead and push on forward. Order of the
Yep.
Phoenix is the next one. I'll go ahead and read this. Film came out in 2007. What was the book?
2003. So there's a 3-year time gap between the last book and this one.
Okay, so she's warming up for the ending of the stories here. I mean, this is the halfway point of the films and the books. Harry's 5th year begins with him being attacked by Dementors in Little Wingjing. Later, he finds out that the Ministry of Magic is in denial of Lord Voldemort's return. Harry is also beset by disturbing and realistic nightmares, while Professor Umbridge, a representative of Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge, is a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Harry becomes aware that Voldemort is after a prophecy which reveals neither can live while the other survives. The rebellion involving the students of Hogwarts, secret organization Order of the Phoenix, the Ministry of Magic, and the Death Eaters begins. So yeah, they're talking about Umbridge. Ugh.
I hate Umbridge so much.
Yeah, it's a really well done character, but I hate that character.
But I mean,
you're supposed to.
it's one of those characters that you just love to hate because like she's written so well to be annoying, to be awful. It's perfect.
I just love how Filch is like all about it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my god, my time finally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Umbridge
This
is
is
a horrible character to watch just because of how frustrating she is, but hey, it's effective.
Yep. Like, this is probably my favorite of all of them. It's where we see Harry really connect with his uncle and develop that relationship, but also to have that relationship be severed prematurely.
Yeah.
We have our first like crazy wizarding battle or duel happen.
Which was
Because
good.
I mean, we
It was good too.
oh,
It was a good fight,
it was a great fight. I mean, it's just such a good movie. And book, all of the acting in it is fantastic. I don't know. I mean, we get Bellatrix Lestrange coming in. What was it? Helen McCroy that plays her? Does that sound familiar?
I forget. It's the female version of Johnny Depp.
Pretty much. And she goes all out. She does a great job. I mean, that character is truly terrifying because of how crazy she's portrayed. It's
Yeah.
great.
I'd say that whole bloodline has definitely become a little muddled when trying to follow it because that bloodline is very active in the Fantastic Beasts stories. And
Yeah.
I think even in the last film there was a Lestrange, and I forget, it was like a sister or something. I don't know. And the thing is whenever they do that, my mind has to go into this like, you know, detective mode where I start digging through my brain as to why they would bring this character back up. Is this person a relative? Is this the father? Is this the mother? Is this like an aunt that was referenced in the original film? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that goes back to like the Star Wars thing where it's like you're kind of dipping, but I mean, here it fits because you're building this character. But when they do it in the Fantastic Beasts, it gets a little bit of annoying because I spend 5 minutes sorting through my brain as to why they would tell me that. It's like, okay, so what's the relevance of this character's bloodline being brought back? But the Lestranges were like notoriously kind of crazy and wild and a predominant supporter of everything evil. So I can understand, but or the thing, I mean, that you get the exit of Sirius Black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very creepy scene in the movie, but it's even creepier in the books.
Yep.
How they describe the veil or whatever, and it's pretty somber for sure, and just kind of you get left with this feeling like it's done. There's nothing you can do. Like
Yep.
you can't grasp it in the second, but it's like, you know, you understand. It's like there is no coming back from that type. The way they portray it, but in the books, it's like they really describe. They're not there very long, but they really describe that archway and what's going on, and And when you see it, it's and when you hear it or read it in the book, it's just like, oh, it's done.
Yeah, but and it's just such like this film. I mean, the last in Goblet of Fire, it changes the tone of the series, but this changes like the story direction. Like the tone has shifted, and now like the hope that we have with Harry having family in Sirius Black and all these different things are just shattered. You're just left with like, oh crap, what's next? Because this ain't good now.
Yeah, and it's sad in terms of Harry and his loss, and kind of like where that character is, and constantly getting things taken away from him and stuff like that. And I mean, the end, you get the little bit of gratification because there's confirmation that Voldemort's back. I mean, this is the one where you have the Dumbledore and
Yes.
you have the Dumbledore and Voldemort fight, which is super cool. And they did harken back to that a little bit in the Fantastic Beasts. You get a little bit more of that type of fighting where there's a lot of elemental and kind of mystical, creative magic going on, like next level type magic. I do love that fight though. I love that whole scene. It's a little bit corny when the whole love speech and all that, but very gratifying to see everybody come through the flute powder. I forget what those are called, but they basically come out of the fireplaces and they see him
Yep.
for a split second, and
And the minister is blown away. Like,
he gets his comeuppance in a very throwaway montage scene at the end. But what happens at the end of that film? I mean, it opens the door for everything that follows. With him no longer being the minister, and who fills the spot, and the changes that happen over the course of the next 3 films or 2 books. It gets pretty political. It gets very World War II-ish in the sense of discrimination and that type of thing. I think that the way they portray, because let's not beat around the bush. It's a very clear representation of like Nazi Germany and World War II. The same thing with Star Wars. You can't go without referencing the Empire and how that whole. Even the New Order, they didn't even skimp on that.
Yeah, that was blatant reference.
Blatant, right, colored, even down to the colors.
Yep.
So it was, you get that. You get that really strong in these other films. The Deathly Hallows and the Half-Blood Prince, where they redo like the fountain or whatever, where it shows Muggles being like enslaved and stuff like that. You that this is where that door is opened and where it's led into in the books to follow, because that minister is gone, and that spot and the corruption that fills that spot. And I mean, not necessarily, right? Because the one that shows up to the wedding to bequeath the items from Dumbledore's will to the kids. He's murdered like minutes after leaving that place, right?
Yeah.
He leaves, and then the wedding starts, and then you get word that the minister is dead, and that type of stuff. And which
then
one
all
is
hell
that?
breaks loose.
That's Deathly Hallows?
Yeah, it's Deathly Hallows.
Deathly Hallows, yeah. But it all starts here. The what happens at the end of this film. This is kind of the last bit where you get a relieving ending, right? Because yes, Sirius is dead, but you get the justification of people now confirming that they weren't lying, that they weren't crazy, that you still get a little bit of a relief, but you get no relief in Half-Blood Prince. You get no relief in Deathly Hallows. And in part 2 of Deathly Hallows, it's still kind of a melancholy ending, with him snapping the wand and stuff like that. But yeah, let's move on to Half-Blood Prince. I just like this one just because of what it has to do with Snape and all that. But I'll read this real quick. In Harry's 6th year at Hogwarts, Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters are increasing their terror upon the wizarding and muggle worlds. Headmaster Albus Dumbledore persuades his old friend Horace Slughorn to return to Hogwarts as a professor, as there is a vacancy to fill. There is a more important reason, however, for Slughorn's return. While in a potions lesson, Harry takes possession of a strangely annotated school textbook, inscribed as belonging to the Half-Blood Prince. Draco Malfoy struggles to carry out a mission presented to him by Voldemort. Meanwhile, Dumbledore and Harry secretly work together to discover the method on how to destroy the Dark Lord once and for all. And that's, we've got 2009 for the film. What's that book?
Oh, the book came out in 2005.
Okay, a couple year difference there.
Yep, it's 2 years.
So this is where I'm Slughorn again. I mentioned one of my favorite characters just because of just the way he's acted, and even the books is written really well.
Hmm.
But we get Horcruxes, you know.
Yep. This is where I think we get the true scope of Voldemort. I mean, we see how truly bad he is, what he's done to do to live and survive, and it really just becomes apparent to the reader or to the viewer.
Yeah, I mean, he had this. This was clear intention for no other reason other than to remain immortal from essentially a child who would have no reason to fear for his life or dying or anything like that. He simply saw it as a precautionary measure to ensure that he would live, which is pretty dark. And then the means of actually fabricating a Horcrux, having to murder somebody.
Well, I mean, the Horcruxes didn't start off because he was afraid of a child. It was because he wanted to live forever.
Yeah, I'm just saying that,
Um,
like, as a child, he had no reason to do. I mean, typically you would assume somebody put in that position would be because they're concerned that they're going to die or that something's going to
yeah,
happen and that they need to tuck away somewhere. But this is preemptive. Like, this is completely preemptive. You know, he's like, yeah, about
yeah.
10
It's like,
years from
oh,
now, you know?
yeah. It's like, well, no. It's like even this. It's like I know I'm going to do some bad stuff here pretty soon. I want to protect myself. I want to keep alive in case someone were to get the best of me. Like he's planning ahead. Like you're
Pretty
talking
evil.
about.
Pretty evil. Pretty evil for
Yeah.
sure. But, in the books here, I'm not sure if this is the book for sure, but this is you really get a lot of the Horcrux talk and the history of
Yep.
Riddle and his who he was getting these from. God, I want to go back and read this book, and this is why I would say this is my favorite. The Half Blood Prince is so deep in the lore of how all this started. With the God, I forget, was it his, like, he didn't know his father, right? His father was like some popular like muggle, and his mom was part of this really grungy family of like pure blood type, a racist, I guess you would say, but just this very grungy group of a long bloodline of pure blood wizards, and the young girl being fascinated with this muggle, and then her brainwashing him, kind of like how what's her face does in the Fantastic Beasts. She took over and she injected herself into his life, and they had a kid, and then he like snaps out of it at one point, and it's just such a crazy story that everything goes on with the Riddle family, and then the heirlooms that he chooses and why and how he gets them, and there's a lot of story there in those books that go
Mhm.
into detail as to the backstory of these Horcruxes, which is very cool, and again another reason to read or listen to the books, because all that juicy backstory is there to enjoy. But what do you think of Order of the Phoenix in particular?
Bad. That's my feeling. I mean, we have that start off where they're looking for the Horcruxes, right? And Dumbledore is essentially cursed from one of the Horcruxes. We just see this like great man shrieking and like in pain of like trying to is it drink that stuff to get to the
Mhm.
Horcrux.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
I mean,
A lot more
ultimately,
detail in that scene as well, in regards
yeah.
to what Riddle did to safeguard that place, and the minute details that Dumbledore is aware of when operating inside that cave, because it's filled with booby traps, and he's aware of them all, even down to how he finds the chain for the boat, which is buried or that's submerged in the water, and all that stuff. But yeah, carry on.
Yep. Anyways, it's all the way that Tom put this all together is just crazy to think that he like was obsessed so much of staying alive that he did all these different things, and it's super like it's sad that someone had to or felt like they had to go through all of this. And I mean, it is whatever for
Well, I
Tom,
mean,
but
in particular, and that's in the book. I mean, he lures those. I mean, they mention it in the movie, but he lures the kids down there so that he could set up his traps, essentially, and
Mhm.
he like uses them as experiments essentially to see whether or not they're working and stuff. If I'm not mistaken, I think because like the boat, it's like it can only carry one person or something, and there's a certain way like Harry. I think they just brush over it like, oh, he's too weak for it to matter. Like it wouldn't. Like some weird stuff. But in the books, it gets a lot more into detail into how, yeah, exactly how creepy and like evil Tom Riddle was as like a kid. I mean, you get a little bit of that from that child actor who did like a really good job.
Yep. All of these different things is just nuts, and the ending is just so sad. And we like just the foreshadowing of what's coming, and very dark, very dark.
Yeah, I mean, you also get the unforgettable online moment of Snape kills Dumbledore, just being screamed out of the windows of moving vehicles on release date of the book. Some of the best content the internet has to offer is seeing people react.
Where's it coming through? Oh, okay. I'm gonna watch it. This guy is evil.
Snape kills Dumbledore.
This isn't even the one.
Snape kills Dumbledore.
This isn't even the one.
Hey.
Hold on.
Snape kills Dumbledore.
Oh, there it is. You can't unhear that. There's no way to unhear that. That's like the ultimate troll. But yeah, that last bit was a popular snippet. I never seen the full video, but that last one where she screams no and all that, that was a popular one on the internet.
Yeah, I see. I knew that was happening when the films came out. Like people that had read the books were, you're dumb.
Yeah, they didn't need to spoil it by that point. If anything, it was probably just a point of topic where it's just like, well, in the books, because that's just how these are. Everybody, oh, the book's so much better. Duh, bro. Like I hate it when people say that because it's like, duh. Like, yep. Unless it's like a 200-page book, there really should be no reason as to why the movie would be better than the book, because the details, the world building, again, the character development and stuff like that is much more deep. You have limitations within a film, so I get it. But yeah, that was always funny about the Half-Blood Prince is that ruining of the book. I mean, it's a big moment, That's a huge moment in the books, and yeah, yep. people ruining it was always a fun thing to watch.
Yeah, but going back to the topic of this book, just talking about the Horcruxes, learning more about Snape, and just very dark book and movie. Extremely good, but dark.
I think I like it just because of you get a little bit of a buddy type of storyline with Dumbledore and Harry. The film, you have Harry sitting in the cafe or whatever, and he's hitting on that chick, and he's about to get them digits, my man. He sees Dumbledore outside, and he goes out there, and they have to zip away, right?
Yeah, and that they go directly to that the crystal cave.
No, they go to Slughorn in the beginning of the film. They go
that's right.
Up Slughorn, and then later when he's like, they're standing there, and he's like, you got to do everything I say, and blah blah blah. So much more detail. Yeah, that's right. So I guess this would be the book. Prisoner of Azkaban would probably be the second one, but this would be the book that I recommend people like listen to if they want to compare movie to book, because I feel the book makes the movie better rather than kind of leaving out details. You know what I mean? Like it gives you so much more juicy content to add into these scenes that doesn't necessarily sway the outcome of the film, but it adds a lot to it. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you get sad stuff from Draco Malfoy's kind of deterioration as a character, and then you get the Snape, the double agent or whatever we got going on here.
Triple agent.
But you have, I mean, I was just angry that they set Hagrid's shack on fire. Like, what did my boy do to you? Like, Jesus, that's just not right. Don't do that. And we're like, was the dog in there? So I just didn't like how, I mean, you're not supposed to like it. How you're left off in that film. It's very somber and unsatisfying. But, I mean, so was The Empire Strikes Back in regards to the somber tone that it ends on. So I like this one a whole lot. Again, my recommendation, read it, listen to it, watch it, kind of consume it, because it's a good tale.
Agreed. So let's move on.
Yeah, what do we got next?
Deathly Hollows.
So these are the two, right? So it was just one book, right? And then
Yep.
2 films.
Yep.
So I'll read these both and we'll just kind of talk about it as one.
Okay.
So for part 1, we got 2010. What year was that for book?
The 2007.
So 2007 for both parts, right? I would assume.
Yep.
Okay. So Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, part 1. After unexpected events at the end of the previous year, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are entrusted with a quest to find and destroy Lord Voldemort's secret to immortality, the Horcruxes. It is supposed to be their final year at Hogwarts, but the collapse of the Ministry of Magic and Voldemort's rise to power prevents them from attending. The trio undergo an arduous journey with many obstacles in their path, including Death Eaters, Snatchers, and mysterious Deathly Hallows, and Harry's connection to the Dark Lord's mind becoming even stronger. Then Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, that one released a year later, same year, 2007. After destroying one Horcrux and discovering the significance of the 3 Deathly Hallows, Harry, Ron, and Hermione continue to seek the other Horcruxes in an attempt to destroy Voldemort, who has now obtained the powerful Elder Wand. The Dark Lord discovers Harry's hunt for the Horcruxes and launches an attack on Hogwarts, where the trio return for one last stand against the dark forces that threaten both the Wizarding and Muggle worlds. So this is the epic one, right? This is the
Yeah,
the
this is
final
the big
battle.
one.
This is the big one. I mean, the first one, you get a lot of world jumping. You know, you get a lot of location hopping. Which one
But
is it?
it's also doing a lot of world building of all these different locations and different things going on. It's this and I want to say it's this one and the second or third one. I can't remember which one precisely, but just it's the fourth one. It's Goblet of Fire. Just do a huge expansion on like the wizarding world. You know.
Yeah, a lot of government, involvement with this one in terms of like the Ministry of Magic and just how corrupt and there's different angles at work here. You know, it's not just Voldemort going to like, hurt and kill. You have corruption and you have, flip-flopping of sides and there's a lot going on. It's not just a final battle. I forget, is part 1 or part 2 where Ron is like messed up? Because at the end of Half-Blood Prince, he has the locket, but he finds out it's fake, and he shows Hermione. And then they say that they're not going to come back. And then the beginning of the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is where Hermione obliviates her parents, right?
Yeah.
And then they all kind of, I like that intro too, where they all kind of just, she like walks out and she's off to go do her thing, I forget in the book if they ever harken back to that and mention as to whether or not she reversed the spell. But that always kind of left me, it's kind of sad,
It's extremely sad.
But I forget if there was some type of resolution to that. But is this the one where Ron gets all emo?
Yes, and he leaves for a while and comes back.
But does he come back in the second movie or does he come back in the first movie?
Oh, I can't remember. I can tell you how he gets back.
Yeah, well, in the book and the film, his little speech is kind of like fast. But in the book, yeah, he goes into details about the word Voldemort being cursed.
Yep.
That was something they never mentioned in the films. That's how they knew where they were, was every time that he said Voldemort, it was like a pager going off, What else do you got in Deathly Hallows?
I mean, the first part of the movie is literally just like the exploration adventure, off to see the wizard type of thing. And it ends with like probably the third saddest scene for me is, Dobby's death and they're burying Dobby.
Yeah. He leaves and come back in that movie. Okay. So yeah. And then they get taken by the Snatchers, and then the torture scene with Lestrange, that's messed up.
Yep.
That is legitimate torture of a child that they have in that movie. I mean, it's pretty brutal in the books too. The dialogue between the two is very like scary. She is crazy, and they don't. You hear her screaming in the movie and all that, but you really don't get the emphasis on how much she's enjoying it while she's doing it,
Yep.
I don't think anything, I mean, it's not saying that she didn't come off absolutely insane in that movie. She did 100%. I don't think anybody else could have done it that well, to be honest. But, that is sad, losing Dobby. you know, you get used to it. Or that character, and again, it's one of those. It's something to push the story further and to show you where the vibe is going. But you get his last little moment. You get him helping and making a difference, and you know that's something else that you get kind of deprived of in the films is Dobby's involvement with Hogwarts. You know, and kind of how defiant he is as an elf. It's like he wants to do what you're supposed to do as a house elf, but at the same time he takes his freedom very seriously. So he's like stuck in between like wanting and needing. Like he needs to do the things that house elves do because it's part of them, you know. But at the same time, he doesn't want to be told what to do because he's a free elf and he takes that very seriously. But I like that character a lot. I think his introduction was annoying. I mean, back in that film when he was introduced, you have the first utterance or near utterance of Avada Kedavra, right?
Yep.
So I mean, no, he was literally going to kill Harry there, right in front of Dumbledore's office, but Dobby stopped him, which is crazy when you think about it. You know, it's like you look past it at the time, but I mean, literally, he was about to murder a child on school grounds in Hogwarts. Like that is insane.
Yeah, you don't come back from that one.
Yeah, that would be a hard one to pass off. You know, self-defense. Is that what it was? So yeah, it's sad to see Dobby go. You get a little bit more of the polyjuice potion with Hermione changing into Bellatrix Lestrange. You get the bank, right? You get that kind of cringe scene. What else? What else is in that film? The blind dragon.
Yeah, there's a lot packed in to both of these movies. There's a lot more storytelling going on in the first one and a lot more action in the second one. So if you weren't prepared for that, you'd be sleeping or at least really bored in the first one. But then in the second one, you know, things really pick up. And I mean, the rankings definitely show that. I mean, the movie rankings for Deathly Hallows Part 1 were number 5 for the year in the United States and number 3 for the worldwide that year. But Deathly Hallows Part 2 in the next year was number 1 in the United States and worldwide.
I mean, so it's a final hurrah. You know, they're for sure going to get some attention.
It's the final hurrah, but I mean, people knew that first part was going to be a little bit more boring. And it, like the critical rating of it did even show that. Like the Metacritic for Part 1 was 65, the Rotten Tomatoes 77, the Cinema Score was an A. But then you have Part 2, the Rotten Tomatoes is a 96, Metacritic 85, and the Cinema Score is an A. So, I mean, there's definitely some people weren't as in favorable. It's the least review or the lowest reviewed out of all the movies go. But it's because of that. A lot of the plot is there. There's not a lot of action, and the action that does take place is, you know, that you have the torture scene and the escape. You have the bank, but there's nothing to date that you would expect from the Wizard movie where you have all these grand fights, especially after Order of Phoenix. You have the fight between Dumbledore and Voldemort. So people just weren't expecting it to be that, especially the average moviegoer who hadn't read the books. It was a different story.
Yeah, and at the end of that film, you have Voldemort opening up the tomb of Dumbledore and taking the Elder One, which, I mean, you also get the full rundown of what the Deathly Hallows are. You know, you get an understanding of the story behind those 3 magical pieces. And going to the next film and thinking about it, did he release the stone out of his hand and it rotated 3 times when it was going out of his palm and fell to the ground? Is that why it worked? Because the way that the stone works is that you rotate it in your palm or you rotate it in your hand 3 times and you like make a wish. And that is like what, you know, that's how it operates. And I remember in the film, he has it in his hand and he just lets it drop. But they zoom in on his hand and the stone is tumbling out of his hand. And I could have swore that I saw almost 3 rotations. Do you think that's how it worked, or what was going on with the stone? Like, did he use it?
I don't know. If he did, I think it was probably inadvertent.
Because, I mean, what's the explanation as to why he survived that final fight with Voldemort?
Well, the official explanation is because he's a Horcrux.
But did he die and get, like, I mean, yeah, I understand why he got, like, you know, he got done in. I'm just saying, like, he should have died. And is the reason that he didn't die, is it because he dropped the stone before going into that fight? Or was it because of some type of contradiction with the Horcrux and the spell and all that stuff?
Yes.
You
I
know
think
what
it's
I'm saying?
I think it's a combination of him like accessing the stone and the fact that he is a Horcrux, and I think they make it pretty clear that Voldemort killed the Horcrux, but not Harry.
Yeah.
And Harry was able to choose, what path to take
Hmm.
because he had the stone. I don't know if he would have died if he didn't have the stone or not. So that's the one thing I'm unclear about. But it's definitely certain that
They made you focus on the fact that he got into the snitch and he found the stone,
Yep.
which snitch might be a recurring character, by the way, now, not just the snitch that he caught in his first match.
Okay.
It is an actual character in Fantastic Beasts now. So
Interesting.
take that from however you want it. But Dumbledore wields a snitch as a weapon, essentially, in that film. It's like a pet, and it goes and bonks people and stuff. Whether it's the same one and it's always had the stone in it, now it's like they're doing the Star Wars. They're adding layers. I don't like it.
Well, so the stone wouldn't have been in there because it wasn't put in the snitch until after.
I'm just saying, is that the one that he utilized? And the way that snitches work,
Okay, yeah.
the way that snitches work is very laid out in the books. Nobody touches them ever. Like, they're not touched by human hands until they're caught, and that's why their print is embedded into the snitch, is because it's like a who won, who actually touched it first type thing. It's a feature of the snitch. So that's going to be a thing where if this is the snitch that they used in that first game, then it's like, okay, well, now you just got rid of all that. Like, I had an explanation.
I highly doubt it then.
I mean, it's weird that he has a snitch and it's like a pet that he sets out like a drone, It gave me thoughts like they were hinting at that snitch being the same one from the film, and it's like, okay, let's not do that. So I don't want to get into that. But yeah, the Deathly Hallows, the Horcruxes. Did you feel that it was a little bit rushed towards the end with them checking off the last like 2 or 3?
I mean, they didn't check off the last 2 or 3 until the second part. It was extremely rushed once we got the second movie, but just because there was so much going on.
How many Horcruxes? Was it 7?
7, including Harry.
So I mean, we have a real Thanos situation here, right? You had the book. The
book was already gone.
You had what did Ron stab in the chamber?
Hermione stabbed the cup with the basilisk fang.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the chalice that was in the room of requirement in its storage form. So you have like a Thanos situation. They're scrambling towards the end. I mean, you get 3 Horcruxes destroyed in a matter of like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's very quick.
It's like if that didn't happen that way, like it would have been done. Like you got Ron and Hermione in the basement stabbing the chalice, and then they're going upstairs and engage Nagini, who then you have Neville come in there and slice him up with the sword of Godric Gryffindor.
Crabbe accidentally destroys the diadem as well with the fiend fire spell.
Yeah, that's something they definitely overlooked in the movies, was how went
it happened, but they didn't explain.
I mean, no, like he was trying to make Draco like a bitch, like he was like taking the leader role like really strong in the books. Very, very a very, very strong shift in tone for that character, but it was kind of like he was just in over his head and just drunk on authority, essentially, because he was also in that little group, wasn't he? He wasn't like, Draco wasn't the only one of them that was involved, right?
Correct.
The other 2 friends were also, I won't say Death Eaters, but they were involved in that whole thing. I know their parents were. They're mentioned in Goblet of Fire, Crabbe and Goyle.
Yeah, I'm looking at a post for Vincent Crabbe. Yeah, under loyalty, Death Eaters is an unofficial thing, so it's not known if he was an actual Death Eater, but his parents were definitely Death Eaters.
But yeah, kind of cast aside. There's a whole story there with the friends and how they kind of turn on Draco because they see him as being weak and him not like fulfilling what he needs to do and all that stuff. And really they internalize that whole struggle with that character, and at the end he changes.
Yep.
What do you think about the whole switcheroo where he drops out of Hagrid's hands and battle number 2? And I guess not even battle number 2, it's battle number 3, maybe. I guess he doesn't. He doesn't battle. He just sits there and dies. So
Yep.
the second main battle at Hogwarts. What'd you think about that?
I mean, Harry was waiting for the right moment and took a great opportunity and did his thing after Nagini did. Was Nagini killed right there, or did it take some time?
He hit Nagini with the spell, which just reflected off of her, and then he ran off. And then
That's when Neville did the thing up
Nagini,
the stairs.
yeah, Nagini was left at that point alone because Voldemort and Harry were off fighting. So Nagini was out doing, her ratchet shit, and then
Yep.
gets sliced up by Neville.
Yep, that follows now. Yep.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough Horcrux to kill for sure. I mean, it's a lot more flesh and bone, but that's a big snake.
Yep.
Yeah, Nagini bites the dust in this film for sure, which is a cool scene too for Neville, and kind of implies that he gets the girl too at the end. But what else we got? We got that fight. I dug it. The little CGI was pretty wonky when they were flying around, but the last fight was really cool. I would have hit Dumbledore, or I would have hit Dumbledore. I would have hit Voldemort one more time when he was like turning to dust, just to make sure.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately it was Voldemort killing himself because the spell reflected back on him. So it's just him shriveling to dust at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he won the duel. Harry did, and
Yeah.
it split the wand a little bit. That was another thing too. I was waiting for that wand to like explode, because the way that it looks like it cracks is like, oh, that thing's just about to fall apart. But
All of the imagery in the Deathly Hollows Part 2 is very, very good. There's one discrepancy from the book that I was a little sad about. It's what Harry does with the wand at the end.
When he breaks it.
Well,
what did he do in
Doesn't
the
in
book?
the book? In the book, doesn't he repair his own wand that was broken instead of keeping, was it Malfoy's wand, which is what he does in the movie?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
then-
only thing that can repair his wand, right?
Yeah, and that's what he does in the book, but I don't remember him doing that in the movie, and I'm like,
No, he just
I
snaps
was-
his wand and throws it. That's it.
well, he snaps the Elder Wand and throws it off the.
You never see his
bridge.
old wand again when he is handed it in pieces.
Yeah, and
yeah, that sucks.
I did not appreciate that.
Yeah.
That was like one of those things. Like, oh, that's on, those warm and fuzzy things that endear well to the Harry Potter universe.
I
And it
mean,
was just like, oh,
You don't get any magic from Harry after that, anyways. So I guess it really doesn't matter in terms of film.
it doesn't matter, but it
You gotta,
matters.
you gotta
to
think of
me.
it. You gotta think of it from like the cutting room floor type of mindset, and be like, who gives a shit? The next time we see him,
Well,
he's gonna
exactly.
be 40 years
That's
old, and
exactly
he's
what
gonna be
it
sending his
was.
kids off. It was a necessary.
That was a touching
removal.
moment, though.
Yeah.
And it would have taken another 5 seconds, 10 seconds of movie. Be like, oh, here, I'm gonna repair my old wand.
I don't know. In the movies, you never got this deep connection with him and his wand to begin with. I mean,
It does.
you see
It
him
doesn't matter.
using different wands frequently in the films, anyways, and it's like, I thought there was like a big deal.
Well, it's because he did the whatever.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, there was a
Yeah.
lot more hopping in the books. I don't even think in the books it was established too much that he had this, because I mean, Ron snapping his and having his replaced like multiple times, I think it was.
Yeah, because he's a dweeb.
Yeah, it's just, you don't really get that sense of it's like a lightsaber. When you see Luke's lightsaber, drop, it's like, you feel that. It's like a character being lost, and you don't really feel it when she hands him his wand, because he just takes her wand and it's right back to business. It's like, well, shucks, now I have no wand. Now we got to share one. It's like, okay. You get a sense of like the magic that's behind it in the first film, but after that, it's kind of just a tool to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that is the final film, and then you get the sign off with him sending his kid off to Hogwarts, and which leads into the Cursed Child, which I never read, and I never saw the musical.
I read The Cursed Child shortly after it came out, but I only read it once because it's a screenplay book, and it was just really hard for me to read, so I didn't.
It's a theatrical
I read
play book. It's even worse. It's for a stage play.
Yeah, so it was just really hard to get into, and I just remember like struggling to get through it just with everything, and I was just like, okay, I did it once, and I didn't quite understand everything. I have like the full, like the gist of what happens, but
I know it's
not enough to talk
a
about any details.
I know it's a role reversal story. I know that his son ends up being Slytherin, and he kind of has animosity towards Harry because he basically told him that he could choose, and it didn't. It didn't let him. I think Draco is a part of a different, or Draco's kid's part of a different house, and he's kind of like the popular kid and all that stuff. It's very kind of role reversal from what I heard and read, but I just wasn't interested.
Mhm.
And I think we're actually going to skip the Fantastic Beasts. We'll probably do that for like a Patreon thing. We're at like 2.5 hours right now.
Yeah.
And it might be closer to 3 hours. So I think we'll just wrap it up here, and we'll do a little extra segment someday for Patreon for the Fantastic Beasts. My overall opinion is the first two movies are horrible. JK Rowling cannot write a screenplay. The third one has some other writers involved, and the pacing feels a lot better. Mads Mikkelsen is a good actor. That's pretty strong in the romance department in regards to like Grindelwald and Dumbledore. A lot of kind of intimate storyline going on with their relationship and the conflict, and then you get kind of a resolution to the whole locket where they have their blood shared and stuff like that. The drama we could have talked about in regards to Johnny Depp and his recasting. Ezra Miller's in this film. He's actually not that bad, to be honest. But to be honest, I mean, if I'm going to boil it down, you got to see them all just because of the characters that are in it. But the third one is probably the best one. It is not the last. It is not a trilogy. It's going to be like 4 or 5 films. So there's still story to be told. So
Very good.
Anything else you got to cap off? Anything you want to hit up before I do my little closeout?
No, I mean, just in general, like we have these different, fandoms, if you will, with Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Star Trek, Harry Potter, and I mean, you can continue to name fandoms, but this is by far one of my most favorite fandoms. Harry Potter will always be near and dear to my heart because of, like I was talking about at the beginning, this like graduation of being able to read fully and understand things that I take in. It's just such a triumph for me personally. So it's always going to be there for me.
Yep. So they're good books. Read them. They're really good audiobooks. Listening to them, and if you like the films, then maybe give them another watch. It's always nice to come back, like I said, warm and fuzzy. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and end it there. That was the entirety of the original Harry Potter films. We skipped the Fantastic Beasts. We originally intended on doing it, but I don't feel like sitting here for another hour talking about movies I really didn't care for. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and segue into our ending social plug. You can find the Nerd Chatter podcast anywhere you can find podcasts. If you want to check out our social media, it is Nerd Chatter Show at pretty much everything: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all that good stuff. For individuals that want to have a little bit more content, we do have that for you over at the Patreon, which is Nerd Chat. Just go ahead and search Nerd Chatter. Link is in the description below. And if you go and head on over to our Twitch channel, you can catch some of our live streams where we just kind of sit around playing some nerd games or just passing some time, hanging out, chit-chatting a little bit. And that's pretty much it. So Garrett, I want to say thank you for stopping by once again and going over some nerd stuff.
My pleasure.
And this marks the end of our kind of catch-up segments. These are one-offs where we choose a topic and we were just kind of establishing where we stand as fans and our history with these properties. But next week, the next show, we plan on going into our legitimate structure for the show where we choose 2 to 4 topics and chit-chat about them and try to keep it within an hour. We'll still do the free game section and all that, but we're going to be kind of splitting them up into smaller segments and having a good laugh at some of the news developments over the last week. So we are out of here. Again, you guys take it easy. Appreciate it.